On the night of October 13th, 2017, a chilling 911 call sent Atlanta police racing to a modest apartment in the Oakland City neighborhood.
Atlanta 911. Ma'am, I have a question, and this is a serious matter. I just left my cousin in the house with my kids. She just left my kids in the house when I came back from work, and two of my kids are dead. What do I gotta do? They dead. She left them dead in the house by themselves.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Where are you now?
I'm in my house. She left my door open. My baby boy, my oldest baby boy, is the only one that's here, the only one that's alive. She left them in the house by themselves. She left them in here, and they knocked the stove on. Can you listen? When I came in, the stove was laying on my friend. I don't know what to do. I just came home to work from this, and she just left my baby dead.
Okay, ma'am. I'm gonna get EMS. And I'm gonna get police and fire at the location. Can you tell me where you're located?
Ma'am, I can't even talk. This is so serious. I'm so scared.
Inside, they discovered a scene so horrifying that it would haunt community. 2 young children, 1-year-old Jakarta Penn and 2-year-old Kayonte Penn, lay lifeless on the floor. Their tiny bodies showed signs of severe burns, and the circumstances of their deaths pointed to an unimaginable act of violence. Their mother, 24-year-old Lamora Williams, claimed she had left her children with a caregiver and returned to find them unresponsive. But as detectives made their findings, her story began to crumble. What emerged was a narrative of neglect, desperation, and a mother pushed to the edge. A tale that would shock the nation and leave lingering questions about mental health, familial obligations, and societal failures. Lamora's story wasn't one of sudden violence. It was the culmination of years of hardship. A mother struggling with poverty and raising her children alone after the father of her kids left the family. But the tragedy that unfolded on that fateful October night was far from an accident, and the evidence would reveal a dark and premeditated act. What drove a mother to commit such an unthinkable crime against her own children? Was it the crushing weight of circumstance, or was there something darker within her? This is the story of Lamora Williams, a mother whose descent into despair ended in the ultimate betrayal. Lamora Williams grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in an environment marred by instability and hardship. From an early age, Lamora's life was fraught with challenges. Friends and family members later recounted that she struggled with behavioral and emotional issues, which some believed were linked to the loss of her father when she was just a teenager. This loss reportedly had a profound impact on her mental health, shaping the struggles that would follow her into adulthood. As a young adult, Lamora became a mother, and her challenges only intensified. By the time of the tragic events in 2017, she was raising her children, Jakarta Penn, 1, Kayonte Penn, 2, and at least 1 older sibling on her own. The children's father, Jamil Penn, was no longer living with the family. Lamora juggled the responsibilities of single parenthood with minimal support, a situation that friends described as overwhelming for her. Family members later revealed that Lamora had shown signs of severe mental health issues for years, with behaviors that raised concerns about her ability to care for her children. Her mother, in particular, noted that Lamora had struggled to manage the demands of parenting and believed she had been battling undiagnosed mental illnesses. Reports suggested that Lamora's mental health deteriorated further after Jamil Penn moved out, leaving her to care for the children alone. Despite these challenges, Lamora appeared to be trying to maintain some semblance of stability. However, her life became increasingly isolated, and those closest to her noticed warning signs that something was terribly wrong. Lamora Williams' background offers a glimpse into a life marked by hardship, emotional turmoil, and unmet needs for mental health support. While many single parents face similar struggles, Lamora's situation took a devastating turn, one that left an indelible mark on her family and community. The night of October 13th, 2017, will forever remain a haunting memory for those who responded to the chilling scene at Lamora Williams' apartment in Oakland City, Atlanta. The call to 911 began with a distraught Lamora claiming she had returned home to find her two youngest children, 1-year-old Jakarta Penn and 2-year-old Yante Penn, dead. She insisted she had left the boys in the care of a babysitter while she was out. When first responders arrived, the scene they encountered was unimaginable. The children's lifeless bodies were discovered with severe burn injuries, and investigators soon identified signs that they had been subjected to extreme heat. Lamora alleged she had no knowledge of what had occurred in her absence, but her story began to unravel almost immediately. Authorities quickly uncovered critical inconsistencies in Lamora's account. Despite her claims about a babysitter, there was no evidence to suggest anyone else had been in the apartment that night. What investigators did find, however, was a gruesome truth. Evidence pointed to the children having been placed inside the apartment's oven, which had been turned on. As the investigation deepened, Lamora's digital footprint came under scrutiny. Authorities discovered that instead of immediately contacting emergency services, Lamora had made a video call to Jamil Penn, the father of the two boys, showing him their lifeless bodies. Jamil later described the traumatic call, stating that Lamora appeared emotionless as she displayed the horrifying scene. Adding to the horror, investigators determined that Lamora had waited hours after discovering the children's deaths to contact authorities. This delay not only complicated the timeline, but also raised questions about her motivations and state of mind. Why had she waited so long to report such a tragedy? And why had she chosen to involve the children's father in such a callous manner? Lamora Williams was arrested just hours after police uncovered the devastating scene in her Oakland City apartment. Investigators, armed with mounting evidence, were confident that the 24-year-old mother was responsible for the horrific deaths of her two youngest sons. Her arrest marked the beginning of a meticulous investigation into the events leading up to the crime. During questioning, Lamora offered conflicting accounts of what happened that night. Initially, she claimed that a babysitter was responsible for the children's deaths, but authorities found no evidence to support this assertion. As her story unraveled, investigators were left to piece together the sequence of events from the physical evidence and witness statements. What stood out most was Lamora's behavior in the hours following the tragedy. The forensic investigation revealed a horrifying truth. Both boys had been placed inside the oven, which was turned on. The autopsy confirmed that they had suffered fatal injuries due to extreme heat. Investigators also noted signs of additional trauma, though the exact timeline of events remained unclear due to the condition of the remains. The crime scene provided further damning evidence. The oven, the children's clothing, and the surrounding area bore the physical markers of the gruesome act. Investigators also found no evidence of forced entry or any indication that a babysitter had been present, directly contradicting Lamora's initial claims. As the investigation progressed, Lamora's mental health became a focal point. Her mother recounted instances where Lamora expressed feelings of being overwhelmed and unfit to care for her children, urging authorities to take her mental state into account. However, prosecutors argued that Lamora's actions were deliberate and premeditated. They pointed to her attempts to deflect blame onto an imaginary babysitter and her delay in calling emergency services as evidence of calculated behavior rather than impulsive or mentally compromised actions. The case sent shockwaves through the Atlanta community. Jamil Penn, devastated by the loss of his sons, became a vocal presence in the media.
It's just crazy, man. It's just so crazy. I never thought she'd do something like this.
Sharing his heartbreak and condemning Lamora's actions. The investigation into Lamora Williams' actions painted a chilling picture of a mother whose overwhelming struggles culminated in an unthinkable tragedy. As the case moved toward trial, the question remained, would her mental health play a role in her defense, or would the evidence overwhelmingly confirm her culpability? Lamora Williams' trial commenced in 2018, drawing intense media scrutiny and public outrage. The proceedings were deeply emotional, with vivid details of the crime and its aftermath presented by prosecutors, witnesses, and forensic experts. The case centered on whether Williams' actions were premeditated or the result of severe mental illness. Prosecutors argued that Lamora Williams' actions were deliberate and calculated. They pointed to several key pieces of evidence to support their case. The timeline. Investigators established that Williams had waited hours after the deaths of her children to call 911, using this time to fabricate a story involving a babysitter. Forensic evidence. The condition of the children's bodies and the oven itself provided incontrovertible evidence of how the crime had been carried out. Digital trail. Authorities uncovered messages and searches on Williams' phone that suggested she had considered harming her children before the incident. These included complaints about her struggles as a mother and statements about feeling overwhelmed. Prosecutors painted a picture of a mother who, overwhelmed by the demands of parenthood and financial struggles, committed a calculated act of violence. They contended that her attempt to blame a non-existent babysitter demonstrated consciousness of guilt and premeditation. Williams' defense team argued that she was suffering from severe mental illness at the time of the crime, which rendered her incapable of fully understanding her actions. They highlighted mental health history. Testimonies from family members and experts detailed her long-standing struggles with depression and instability. Her mother's statements about Williams' erratic behavior were a cornerstone of the defense. Psychological evaluation. The defense presented evidence that Williams exhibited signs of psychosis and had been overwhelmed by the pressures of raising multiple children alone. Context of desperation. The defense suggested that Williams' actions were not premeditated, but rather the result of a sudden and uncontrollable breakdown. While the defense acknowledged the horrific nature of the crime, they sought to mitigate Williams' culpability by emphasizing her mental state and lack of adequate support systems. After weeks of emotional testimony and detailed evidence, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. Lamora Williams was convicted of multiple charges, including 2 counts of felony murder and aggravated assault. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring she would never walk free. During the sentencing, the judge remarked on the gravity of the crime, stating that the murders were unthinkable and represented a profound betrayal of the trust inherent in parenthood. Williams, who had shown little emotion throughout the trial, remained stoic as the sentence was read. The trial's conclusion brought a measure of closure to the grieving family, but the pain of the loss lingered. The case of Lamora Williams is a reminder of the complex interplay between mental health, poverty, and parental responsibilities. Her actions shocked the nation, leaving many to grapple with the question, how could a mother commit such an unthinkable crime against her own children? As we reflect on this case, it raises important questions. How can society better support struggling parents before a crisis occurs? What more can be done to address mental health challenges, particularly in underserved communities? And how do we prevent future tragedies like this one? Let us honor the memory of Jakarta and Kayante by advocating for systemic changes that prioritize mental health awareness, accessible resources, and child welfare. Their story is a call to action for all of us to recognize and address the signs of distress in those around us, ensuring that no parent or child falls through the cracks. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Join us as we continue to shed light on true crime stories and advocate for awareness, accountability, and change.